When we look back at ancient history, our understanding is so heavily reliant on the writings of foreign travelers, ambassadors, and scholars. But what happens when one of the most important observers of an ancient empire has his legacy just almost completely erased by time? Well, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're reconstructing a genuinely fascinating historical mystery. We're uncovering the story of Deimachus, an ancient Greek diplomat who walked the halls of literally one of the most powerful empires in human history, and yet his name has almost entirely slipped through the cracks. Let's explore his journey, the mighty empires he connected, and the precious knowledge that was lost.
Okay, so let's dive into this. If you follow ancient Indian history, you almost certainly know the name Megasthenes, right? He was the super famous Greek ambassador who wrote the celebrated book Indica, which basically gave the Western world this detailed look at the Mauryan Empire. But there was actually another highly trusted Greek envoy sent just a generation later who also lived in the Mauryan court. His name was Deimachus, and he was a brilliant scholar, a keen observer, and a trusted diplomat. He wrote this extensive account of his time in India, just like Megasthenes. But here's the absolute tragedy. His book completely vanished. No trace. However, as we'll see, the ghost of his writings still fundamentally shaped how the ancient world understood India.
Part 1. A divided ancient world. To understand how this ghost of history came to be, we really have to look at the geopolitical chessboard right after the death of Alexander the Great in 323 BC. Basically, his impossibly vast empire violently fractured into pieces, totally divided up among his top generals. Over in the west, one of these generals, Seleucus I Nicator, rises to power around 305 BC, establishing the massive Seleucid Empire. Fast forward a little bit to 281 BC, and his successor, Antiochus I Soter, takes the throne. Meanwhile, in the east, an equally formidable power had risen, the Mauryan Empire, founded by Chandragupta Maurya. So suddenly, the ancient world had two massive superpowers sharing a very tense border. And because of that, diplomacy with these rising Indian powers became just as absolutely crucial to the Greeks as war.
Following the initial and frankly inevitable military clash between Seleucus and Chandragupta Maurya, both sides essentially realized that war was just way too costly. Instead, they hammered out a powerful peace treaty. And this wasn't just some temporary ceasefire, it was a monumental agreement that threw open the doors for deep, ongoing diplomatic and cultural connections between the Hellenistic world and the booming Mauryan Empire. It set a massive precedent. The Greeks and the Indians were going to talk, they were going to trade, and they were going to exchange ideas. And this rich diplomatic tradition is exactly the world that our guy Deimachus inherited.
Part 2. Bindusara and the Greeks. To really set the stage for our ambassador's arrival, it helps to look at the dynamic between these empires. Recognizing India's incredible economic wealth, its crucial trade routes, and its famously intimidating military might, especially those war elephants, the Seleucid king Antiochus I Soter knew for sure he needed to maintain the alliance his father had built. So he sent Deimachus directly to the court of the new Mauryan emperor, Bindusara. Now remember, an ambassador back then wasn't just a glorified mailman. Deimachus was likely from a highly educated, elite family. He had to be a scholar, a sharp political observer, and honestly, a masterful negotiator to be trusted with such a vital mission.
There's actually this incredibly famous, kind of cheeky anecdote that survives about the relationship between these two rulers. Emperor Bindusara sent a message to the Syrian king Antiochus, asking him to purchase and send 3 very specific items from the Greek world to India. He asked for sweet wine, dried figs, and a philosopher. Yes, you heard that right. Along with the snacks and drinks, he wanted an actual Greek intellectual shipped over to his court.
So how did Antiochus handle that fascinating shopping list? Well, the Greeks happily shipped over the sweet wine and the dried figs. But they had to, diplomatically refuse the third request. Antiochus sent a message back essentially explaining that, according to Greek laws, philosophers simply couldn't be bought and traded like commodities. Now, while historians debate if this exchange happened exactly word for word as written, it perfectly illustrates the warm, slightly informal, and very culturally curious contact between these civilizations. They weren't just trading spices and gold, they were genuinely interested in each other's ideas.
Part 3. Megasthenes versus Deimachus. When we compare Deimachus to the ambassador we actually remember today, we see exactly what an absolutely massive piece of history we lost. Both Megasthenes and Deimachus had incredible access to the highest levels of Indian power. Megasthenes was sent by Seleucus to Chandragupta Maurya, and Deimachus was sent by Antiochus to Bindusara. But while Megasthenes enjoys huge fame today because his detailed accounts survived through his famous work, the Indica, Deimachus remains largely unknown. Why? because his unique, detailed writings were tragically destroyed by the fires of time.
Part 4, Fragments of a Lost Book.
Which obviously brings up a massive question. How do we even know Deimachus existed, let alone what he observed, if his primary texts completely vanished? Well, we know he didn't just sit quietly in the court. He wrote extensively. Based on the clues left behind, historians deduce that he wrote sweeping chapters acting as a vital observer of Indian culture for the Hellenistic world. He documented the whole shebang, the complexities of Indian society, the highly organized royal administration of the Mauryan Empire, and the incredible exotic nature and animals of the subcontinent.
We know about these missing chapters because of a familiar and frankly somewhat frustrating mechanism of history. We only know Deimachus' work through the shadows and fragments quoted much later by other renowned ancient writers. Historians like Strabo, Pliny the Elder, and Athenaeus actually read Deimachus' book while it still existed, and when they wrote their own books, they quoted him or referenced his observations. So today, historians have to painstakingly sift through these later Roman and Greek texts to piece together the shattered mosaic of Deimachus' original work.
And through those historical echoes, what do we see? We see that Deimachus meticulously observed an incredible range of topics. He noted the complex social classes and religious customs. He commented on how highly organized the Mauryan administrative state was. Greek readers were fascinated by Indian philosophy, so Deimachus provided details on the Brahmins and the Shramanas, the ascetic monks and philosophers of India. And, of course, he wrote about the sheer scale of the land, the giant rivers, the terrifyingly powerful war elephants, which were highly sought after by Greek armies, and the abundant wealth generated by Indian agriculture and trade.
But here's the catch for historians today. Reconstructing his work from these secondary quotes builds a really unique challenge. We must view his accounts neutrally and very carefully. Like many ancient foreign observers, Deimachus documented hard factual realities, the wealthy trade networks, the powerful elephants, the structured society. But we also have to filter out the typical Hellenistic exaggerations that were super popular at the time. I mean, Greek audiences loved hearing about strange, mythical human races, miraculous beasts, and exaggerated, almost magical events in distant lands. So historians today have to carefully cross-reference his surviving fragments with Indian texts and Chinese traveler accounts to separate the hard facts from the ancient sensationalism.
Part 5. Why Deimachus Still Matters. So considering his book is completely gone and we only have these scattered quotes, why does this missing puzzle piece even matter to us today? Well, the sheer fact that Deimachus was there, representing a massive Western empire in an Indian court, proves something vital. It proves that ancient India under the Mauryans wasn't some isolated, mysterious kingdom closed off from the world. No way. It was a major interconnected player in a vibrant, globalized political landscape. His mission highlights incredibly active international trade networks of spices, gems, and textiles. It demonstrates a vast cultural and philosophical exchange between East and West. Above all, it shows the power of ancient diplomacy, that empires preferred to send their brightest minds to understand each other rather than just sending armies to destroy each other.
Deimachus was far more than just a forgotten ambassador. He was a literal bridge between two of the greatest civilizations in human history. He observed an era of peace, intellectual curiosity, and massive global trade. So I'm going to leave you with this final, kind of wild thought to ponder. If this vanished book had survived the fires of time, what completely new secrets about our ancient world, about the court of Bindusara, and about the deep connections between the Greeks and the Indians would we know today? Because history is just as much about what is lost as it is about what is found. Thanks for hanging out for this explainer, and keep questioning the past.